Hey, it's Brian. This is my cheat sheet for Tuesday, July 24th. We could see the biggest rush to the bankruptcy court in our nation's history if one of two federal recommendations on student loans is adhered to. What's going on? All right, so there's been a Fed panel to study student loans. We've heard that it's everything from, the next shoe to drop to the subprime mortgage crisis part two. Look, it is a big deal. Student loan debt is huge, in the trillions, and a lot of people are in default. But the one key recommendation that we really have to be cautious of is one that would, for the first time ever, make the one thing that can't be discharged in bankruptcy potentially be discharged, and that is student loan debt. That was the top recommendation of this Fed panel that studies student loan. That's one way to make it go away. Here's something that's key. And if you have excess student loan debt that you're having trouble with, if any of your kids do, the initial reaction is going to be, yes, this is terrific. Here's the key, though. If you want anything regarding stability in student loans, if this is implemented, it needs to be on future loans, not ones that have already been originated. If the guidelines are changed going back, as much as it might be nice for those people that are in trouble, the game will forever be changed. The remaining private companies that originate student loans are going to get out of the business. In some cases, they'll be forced out of business. And we're going to be left with a marketplace that has one provider, the federal government, at a much higher interest rate. Allow me to explain. When companies are originating loans, the interest rate that they charge you is derived upon the level of risk. Part of the reason why student loans have never been as high as other loans. Remember, like back during the late 70s, early 80s, where we had inflation of 17, 18%, you couldn't get a mortgage for under 18% at one place for a couple of years. Even then, student loans were under 10%. Today, even as much as we had the whole debate about student loans and, we got to subsidize the interest rate, it's because it was at 6%. That would be the doubling of it. Student loan rates would go to 6%. And the reason it's so low, including for people that don't even necessarily have much of a credit history, is because there's not risk of default. Not over the long run, because you have to pay it back. If you change your going back, many of those companies are going to be put out of business. The other piece of it is, going forward, be careful what you ask for. If bankruptcy suddenly can be discharged, or if student loan debt can be discharged in bankruptcy, student loan interest rates are going to have to go much higher. Because then banks are going to have to account for the level of default rate that they believe is going to occur. And that means higher interest rates. So it's not a just win-win situation here. It can't be, not financially. You're either going to have, if this becomes law, fewer lenders and necessarily higher interest rates, or just going forward, higher interest rates. But either way, we have to pay for it somewhere. Airlines raising prices. Most airlines, pretty much all of them actually, have raised round-trip airfares domestically by $4 to $10. But here's the key thing. Don't book beyond August 20th. August 20th is a key date. It's a date where most airline operating companies are beginning to price for the fall. And here's what we're noticing. Booking trends going forward are really, really weak. And it looks like, even though you're seeing price increases right now because there's still reasonable demand, that most airline companies are going to be cutting at least some domestic airfare by 10 to 20%. And we should know that on August 20th. So if you book airfare right now, book just for really just the next 3 weeks. And don't book beyond August 20th, because the odds are you'll be able to get a better price than you can right now. Here's an inconvenient truth, if you will. Companies, 12 years ago, there was an index to study the top companies that lobby, those that spend the most money lobbying in Washington. And the survey says, these top 50 companies studied for the past 12 years of this index, every single year have outperformed financially the average of everybody else in the S&P 500. So lobbying, in essence, works. And no surprise, I suppose, that Google and Facebook are setting records themselves for lobbying this year. Simply, it works. You can do with that what you will. In Europe, an absolute disaster right now. Here's what you need to know. Moody's ended up putting everybody on negative outlook that already wasn't, including Germany. Europe's in an absolute mess right now. Spain, they had their borrowing rate go up to 7.5%, a rate at which no country has ever recovered from, and they're at real risk potentially of needing a bailout and defaulting. Europe is absolutely going to be driving the day in our financial markets for the foreseeable future. Get ready for that. Europe's on fire. Good time to go visit. Terrible time to have any company invested that relies heavily on Europe. Just ask McDonald's. They got cooked yesterday because of currency exchange rates. Cheat sheet for today. Enjoy yours. See you tomorrow.